So welcome everyone to our webinar series. We've been doing this for right about 3 years at this point. My name is Jan Lehman and I'm the CEO of CTC Productivity, and with me are some of my amazing team members. Arnie Howes is actually doing the webinar today. Arnie is a business process improvement guru and also SharePoint Teams and expert as well. And then Nancy's also on the call with us, and Nancy's going to be doing the webinar next month. And Nancy is what we call a business application expert. So she knows all the bells and whistles and features of the applications, and yeah, an awesome trainer. So today we're going to be touching on how to run effective meetings using Teams and SharePoint. And then Arnie just pulled up the slide to talk about what we're doing next month. And I'm going to go ahead and enter into chat some links for you if you're interested. So if you want to sign up for the webinar next month that Nancy's doing, she's doing on what's new in Microsoft Teams. I have to say I'm excited for that one. I haven't been hearing any of the latest stuff, so I always learn a ton on these webinars. But in the links, you have a lot of different links. You've got some of the past recordings. We've been doing this for 3 years, so there's a lot of them. It's a link to our website to see those. You can sign up for our newsletter, and then you'll be alerted about some of the webinars that come out, and you'll also learn other productivity tips. We're starting to include now case studies from the work we've been doing with clients with 365. Those are in there, and you can sign up for our YouTube channel. So lots of options. So our format today, I'm going to do a couple slides. Arnie's going to do about 20 minutes content, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So feel free, if you've got questions along the way, start entering it into the chat, but that's the format we follow.
Hey,
and so,
Jan,
yeah,
I just want to, the links you put in there, you didn't mention your book, and Joe made sure that he said, and she's a published author. So I wanted to call that out because that is a huge accomplishment. And
thank you.
I don't know if you want to share your like the email that you sent me about what's happening on Amazon today.
Yeah, I'll tell it at the end, but thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Joe, for the call out. But I will talk about that at the end. But yes, it's been a great month, let's just say. So hang on to the end of the presentation so you hear what's going on with the book. So thank you. All right, so I'm going to just touch on a couple of things about what we do with this webinar series. So there's a lot of webinars, there's a lot of videos out there that talk about, you know, here's this particular tool and all the bells and whistle with it. And we sometimes will do that, but our real focus is to listen to our clients to understand what their productivity issues are, their efficiency issues are, and then how do we streamline that workflow? And if and only if technology can help, we want to apply it. And so we find 365 we're pulling in all the time. So if your company struggles with any of the things listed on this list right here to the left, you'll need 365. So most companies are struggling in the team environment with communication, collaboration, accountability, lots of good things. So 365 is definitely a tool you want to explore if you're struggling with those. Also, most companies, what we're seeing is most companies are staying in a hybrid model. There's a few that are 100% back in the office, and then there's some that are 100% remote. But no matter what your work solution is or work setup is, definitely 365 is something to consider, because even if you're back in the office full time, you're still going to have a sick kid at home and somebody needs to work from home and needs that flexibility and cloud-based solutions. So still a great tool to consider in that model as well. We are just starting to share some different client stories. This one we've done a couple times now. We're going to swap it out next month. But according to our clients, because you don't know if you want to trust us whether you should explore 365, but we worked with this case study is with Arden Credit Union, and the client saying that 365 works as if it's done right. So a lot of times we will see companies trying to set up 365 on their own, and they're frustrated because permissions aren't working and links aren't working and lots of different things. So it's really important it is done correctly. What she likes as well is she basically says a lot of software applications promise a lot but don't deliver, but she thinks 365 actually works, by the way, if it's set up correctly again. She in particular likes the marriage between the phone and the desktop. So the fact that you can access everything on your phone within the 365 environment is really important for their organization. And it's critical for a hybrid work model, which is what they are in their organization. So anyway, I encourage you to explore some of the case studies that are in the links on the side.
And Jan, I may surprise you with this. I put your book slide. You said at the end, it's next. You got to talk about it now.
Oh!
So sorry if I put it in the wrong place, but please tell about your book.
That's all good. I'm happy to talk about it. It's been the thing. So I am super happy to tell you that my book launched now, I think 2 weeks ago. And we hit Amazon bestseller, Amazon new release in workplace culture and leadership. I could not be more excited about that. We hit on six of the top categories. One of those was time management. And Amazon has actually sold out of the book twice so far. So we're super, super excited. We're doing a special thing today. So where the book is actually free, the ebook is free. So if you are on a budget or you like ebooks or anything, hop over to Amazon today. It's only today. It was yesterday and today. Go buy the free ebook. And if you like the book, if you'll please do an Amazon review, that would be fabulous. I'm trying to hit 50 reviews with 55-star reviews. So that would be a great help. So thank you. You guys are so sweet. So, all right, let's get on to Arnie.
Hey, I read it before it was a book, and it's definitely worth reading.
Yay. Thanks, Arnie. I appreciate it. So, all right. Am I done? Yes. Hand it over to Arnie. Perfect.
So today, I know the title said how to streamline meetings with Teams and SharePoint. Yes, we're going to do that. But just as importantly, and I may even spend more time on how to change the culture and expectations among your staff if you go this direction. So yes, we're going to use Teams and SharePoint to improve meetings, but more importantly, expectations and meeting culture. So we've all seen this. We may have all said this. This meeting could have been an email. I see it all over the interwebs, but I'm going to improve that even more and say, this meeting could have been Teams channel posts and SharePoint list items. We don't like email internally around here because Teams is so much better. But man, when you use Teams and SharePoint list items, everyone can show up to the meeting. Even if you still have the meeting, everybody will already know what's going on and the meeting will go so much faster and more smoothly. So much more efficient than email. So, and also I'm going to talk mostly about recurring meetings. The one-offs, a lot of this will apply, but the things I'm going to cover especially help recurring meetings. So what are the goals of those recurring meetings that most people have, whether it's for a staff, for project, whatever? One of the main goals is for everyone to get on the same page. Generally, seems like the first half of the meeting is always giving status updates. And for 20 years, I have tried to get leaders to use SharePoint to receive those updates so that you can totally eliminate that update. Most people are twiddling their thumbs. They say, come on, I want to get to the dialogue part of this meeting because that's where the real value is. Updates can be given offline. Let's not make people sit through those in a meeting. More goals and agenda for recurring meetings. We identify and solve issues often, likewise for opportunities. And you need to get a consensus on what our staff or our work group are going to do going forward. And last but not least, there are meeting minutes for future reference and the employees who are absent. Someone has to take notes. They need to document the minutes. I'm not a big fan of meeting minutes because when was the last time you went and searched to see what you said in a meeting, what you are most concerned about when you go to read meeting minutes? Although I know they do serve some purposes, but the main reason people go to meeting minutes is to learn about what was said about a specific issue. There are much better ways of making people click through endless Word documents and scrolling looking for that topic. And plus the topics can be discussed from meeting to meeting to meeting, so it may be in multiple documents. So what I'm going to suggest you do in addition to meeting minutes or in place of meeting minutes, I think you'll like. So what are the costs of recurring meetings? Time, of course. They cost time away from role-related work for each attendee. You hire people to do role-related work, not sit in meetings. Meetings have a valuable purpose, but they don't add value to the products or the services that you sell to customers or clients. You want them creating value. Meetings don't create value. So if employees are in a meeting, they're not completing their work that you hired them to do most of the time. So recurring meetings also cost a lot of money. I've got an example later that I'll go through real quickly, but you've got the labor and salary costs times the number of attendees times the length and frequency of the recurring meetings. Most people will be quite shocked when they run those calculations and see what those 1 to 2 hour meetings cost them over the course of a year. Also, it costs your workforce motivation. If your employees are attending meetings that are too frequent, too long, or poorly run, they get demotivated. We all do. We've been there. And especially with recurring meetings, the impact to personal calendars is great. Even if you have an hourly recurring meeting, the cost to those people's personal calendars is they have to leave some time before, some time after to get adjusted, get ready for the meeting, to maybe wrap up after the meeting and then resume whatever they need to be doing. So the cost, the impact to personal calendars is greater than that 1 hour. And here's a biggie: impact to flow. Achieving workflow, optimal flow. It's hard enough to get, but when you have to stop it to go to a meeting, that's damaging if you're on a roll. So one of the most transformative books I ever read, and I read a lot, I would put this in the top 5 books I have ever read to help me in my career. But Hollowell, the author, said in flow, a person becomes so immersed in what he's doing that he loses self-consciousness altogether. You look up, 4 hours have passed and you've achieved an incredible amount of finished product, whatever that is. So meetings throw a wet blanket on flow and personal productivity. So the more you can reduce the number and length of your meetings, you're going to see quite an exponential improvement. And last but not least, not as much of this goes on, but you still have some travel expenses if you're doing face-to-face meetings, especially in larger corporations. So not as big as it used to be, but that's still a consideration. So if we can reduce the number of recurring meetings or improve them, we can spend more time. This is kind of a repeat, more time spent on value-adding activities. Increase calendar flexibility. All of your employees gain back that time that they can schedule other things. You improve morale, kind of the inverse of what I had before. More flow and ultimately more profit. That's what we're all after, unless you're a nonprofit, but still you're providing services. So if you're a nonprofit, you're providing more services. So there you go. So a quick savings example for a staff of 8, and I just figured $75,000 in loaded salary per employee. So if you're an engineering company or a medical staff, that's more, but that's probably on a conservative day in the side in this day and age. But if you can reduce a recurring meeting, and I'm thinking weekly here, if you can just reduce that by 30 minutes, which generally, if you just get rid of the status update part of your meeting, that's 30 minutes easily. That's the easiest thing to replace. That's going to save 208 man hours per year. I'm not even counting the time before and after meetings that is likely wasted. $7,500 savings per year doesn't seem like that big, but again, that's extremely conservative estimate. I know it's more. And you make 624 more hours available for personal flow per year.
I'm convinced, Arnie.
Okay, enough convincing. So now I'm going to tell you how to do it. So yeah, enough of that. We all know it's a good thing. I just wanted to emphasize how outrageously important it is to stop the hemorrhaging that meetings cause in profit and morale.
No, it was good, Arnie. People don't measure wasted time. It's important to do numbers so people get it. That's great.
Yeah, and even if it's only 5 minutes, 5 minutes times 52 weeks time, it's huge. So enough of that. Let's move on to how are we going to do that with Teams and SharePoint. So I touched on this. I have done this for 20 years since SharePoint was first rolled out by Microsoft. I think it was 2003, exactly 20 years. Well, it was 2001. I started in 2003, but still, long time. People should be putting their status updates in well prior to the meeting so that people have time to read it and come to the meeting with educated questions, and you save that 30 minutes or whatever. So That's an easy win. And again, that's using SharePoint lists. I demonstrated that in webinars earlier. Matter of fact, if you go back and look at November, December, and January's webinars, you will see how this fits together. I'm not going to go through step by step here, but here's an example of how neatly a staff's status updates could be laid out in front of all the other meeting attendees before the meeting. So they can look at, they can get updated on everyone's status and what's going on in the rest of the staff or the other departments while they're drinking their coffee before they start their day or whatever. But they don't have to sit there in the meeting and twiddle their thumbs while everyone drones on and on about what's going on in their department. And by the way, this is keyword searchable and documented very well for future review. So there, less need for your minutes.
Mhm.
Okay, and step number 2, supplement the in-person issue resolution discussions with Teams channel post threads. That's a lot of words. What it means is, in this day and age, most people, whether it's Facebook, internet forums, whatever, they're used to having dialogue electronically. Teams hits it out of the park. And if you first post your status updates, and then it's expected of people to ask their questions before the meeting in the Teams channel posts, you can have a robust discussion about that, answer a lot of questions, and further reduce that talking in circles back and forth second half of the meeting, where having those discussions and you talk in circles, kind of like I'm doing right now. I'm going to move on, but you get the point. Let's have conversations in Teams offline rather than in the meeting where it costs a lot of money. So one thing to know, this is a leap of faith for the leader. These issues have got to be handled. We're totally changing the culture. So the leader's got to be involved in this, and to change the culture, it means that leaders have got to mandate that people have their discussions in the Teams channel posts. And in the early going, the leader or a delegate of the leader needs to really monitor these channel post threads and make sure there's good discussion going on and get it going and do some coaching. A little bit of work for the leader and or the delegate in the early going, but it is so worth it. And you don't want your business to suffer because in transitioning to Teams, you don't get an issue resolved. So a little bit of babysitting needed. So here's an example. If you've not used channel post threads, I kind of cropped off the channels on the left, but you can see where everybody has seen this format, whether it's Facebook or other tool. Good discussions. And again, importantly, it becomes keyword searchable in the future. The Teams search engine is powerful. I love it. And finally, step number 3, use a SharePoint meeting agenda page to streamline meetings. I have used these for 20 years. Use SharePoint to bring all the information together. This also saves your administrative assistant or meeting leader a lot of time, because oftentimes if you're in charge of a meeting or getting the information for a meeting, you've got to drill down in folders and grab files. You've got to make sure the files are the most recent. It's a lot of work to get ready for a meeting, information and file wise. So using SharePoint meeting agenda pages, the SharePoint does the work. It goes and gets real-time information and has it ready for the meeting. And then all you have to do is beam that page up. And if you want to see an example of the meeting agenda page, here's a snapshot. But go back and look at the March 2022 EOS webinar that I did, that Jan and I and Nancy had. So on there, you'll see this actually demonstrated. But it's a SharePoint page that, again, fetches all that information. So on this page, and again, this is a snapshot, the little down arrows, carrots, whatever you want to call them, those expand the section to where, for example, if we went to look at these quarterly goals, 90-day goals, maybe you call them rocks if you do EOS. But when you expand it, right there it is. There are our quarterly goals and we can discuss what, and again, people have updated these prior to the meeting. They don't have to tell you where it stands. But right there it is for a quick overview. And per EOS, the name escapes me, but he recommends 5 minutes to do this because we're ready for the meeting and we're ripping through the meeting. So sample expectations, again, the most important part of this, even though we're using Teams and SharePoint, is the leader must make sure that we have a smooth transition to these new tools. So as an example, let's go back here. I'm going to be using an example for one client I worked with who had a 2-hour, absolutely hated weekly staff meeting on Mondays. His direct reports told me, said, I absolutely hate this meeting. It shouldn't take this long. And it was a very large group of highly paid engineers. So this was an expensive meeting. So here are the example expectations that he placed upon the attendees. He told his troops, enter your weekly updates by end of business on Fridays. Again, this is for a Monday meeting. And then he told everyone, why is it not advancing? There we go. And then he told everybody, secondly, to review the rest of the team's updates and milestone schedule by meeting time on Monday afternoon. And preferably also, and again, in phase 2 of his changes, he said, now we're going to start handling issues outside of meeting time, if at all possible, by using the channel post threads. So he offloaded these discussions in the meetings completely into Teams. And if something wasn't resolved, then they continued discussing it in those Monday meetings. So, and again, here's one thing I say too, is if an issue is important enough to take up that expensive meeting time, it's important enough to discuss before the meeting, 24/7, the whole week long, at people's leisure in Teams. So,
Hey, Arnie, can I interrupt you real quick? So there's some really good conversations going on in chat that probably makes sense to interject. So there was one question: is a post the same thing as a chat?
no.
And right, you want to explain maybe the difference?
This is awesome. And this is one of the most important things that you can teach a work group when Teams is being rolled out. Chat has its uses, but it does not break topics out by, it does not break topics out. They're all just, it's a running conversation. Yes, it's keyword searchable in chat, but especially as the leader of an organization or the leader of a work group, you can't really mandate it, but you can expect it and you can give some feedback. But these subject matter discussions should be handled in the post section of the appropriate channel, because what you're doing is over time, you're building a colossal knowledge base for you to review in the future. For new employees who are onboarding, maybe you lost a key employee mid-project, that person can get up to speed very fast and have a searchable knowledge base about that project. And it's extremely valuable, but it cannot happen unless all employees understand that they are expected to conduct subject matter discussions in channel posts and then save chat for things that are not of interest to the whole team, that are sensitive or that have nothing to do with work, like, hey, let's go get a pizza after work or whatever.
Yeah, one of the good or bad things about Microsoft, there's a million ways to do stuff. And so it's just really important companies figure out how to do it. And that's part of what the role we play. And so typically that is exactly what we say. A chat's kind of private conversation, one-on-one. Maybe the other thing to explain, Arnie, because there might be some folks on here that don't even understand what the post in a channel is. And here's the deal. We don't know the knowledge level of people attending. So, past webinars probably would be helpful for education there. But I think the difference right now, like an email is like a hodgepodge of a lot of stuff, right? So where these conversations maybe could be happening in email, it's not as effective because you get one email from a client, then you get another email that's a question about a meeting coming up, and the next email is like a budget issue question. So it's kind of a hodgepodge. In Teams, it's about organizing information and data. And so a channel is like a specific channel for conversations around that workflow or that topic or that communication channel. And so think of the conversation being organized all together in that space. So that by itself is an advantage above email, which is kind of a hodgepodge. Arnie, did I explain that well enough, do you think?
You did very well, Jan, and it made me think of another selling point is when you get emails, what's the first thing you do? If it's a good, juicy email and something you want to save or a good discussion, the first thing you do is drag it into a folder you've previously created for that type of a discussion. The problem is when 8 other people reply, you're constantly dragging them over there. Now you've got 14, 20, 25 copies of the same message cluttering up that folder. If your work group learns to use channel posts instead of chat or emails, the conversation starts out, as Jan said, it starts out in the right folder. Nobody has to move it. And just as importantly, there is only one version of the entire conversation, and it is always the most up to date.
Right.
I can't emphasize enough the value in learning to use channel posts as a work group.
I was going to mention that, and you mentioned at the end there, Arnie, that it's the one and done. You only have one copy. So it's not like 20 people have to file the same message and figure out their organizational structure. And then a new person comes on board and one of the people goes, oh man, let me share the folder that I created that has this whole history. The history is already there as soon as they join the team. So it's really huge to keep it in the space where all new employees to the project or to the company are going to have access to it.
Excellent.
So there's Arnie, there's a couple more questions, but I think let's go ahead and wrap up and then we'll open back up for Q&A, but keep asking the questions because it's great dialogue going on. Oh, you're at the end. Well, there we go. But let me wrap up and then we'll bring it back.
I didn't give you any warning. Hey, Jan.
That's all right. So I just have a couple slides and then we'll answer the questions in the chat and keep asking them, and you're welcome to unmute yourself as well. So just a quick wrap up. So a lot of times people that stumble upon our YouTube videos think that all we do is Microsoft 365, but we're really a productivity company. We're here to help companies run more efficiently. And so, yes, one of the things we do is a lot on technology consulting, business process improvement work in that space. But in addition to that, we also do, go ahead, Arnie, you can flip. Thank you. We also do a lot of, I do a lot of executive coaching. Nancy and I do a lot of training. We do lots of different, anything really related to helping a company run more efficiently. These are topics we typically are covering. And a lot of times it's hardcore technical training. A lot of times it's soft skill training, like how to run an effective meeting. There's also the soft skill aspect of, do you know how to clearly state the meeting objective and keep people on track for the, for the agenda, et cetera. So. And just a reminder again that the webinar next month is what's new in Microsoft 365. Again, I'm entering all those million links in there because there's one of them is the registration for the new for that particular webinar next month. And now we'll open it for Q&A. So I'm going to go back because there were some really good questions. One in particular, that's a reality check. And so Sandy, I appreciate that. So Sandy said, aside from having leadership mandate the use of posts, do you have any other tips on how to get your team started using these consistently? So I'll just say, Sandy, sometimes that is what needs to happen is you have a group that gets on board and works together. They're almost piloting it to figure out the right way to work it. And sometimes that can work well. And then that gets the groundswell going of getting people excited because when they hear why it's beneficial, why it's helpful, then more people are likely to jump on and follow the same approach. But typically what Arnie says is right. Typically you do need leadership to step in because you will always have those people that want to default to keep using email because it's easy, it's what they know. But go ahead and do it with one of the groups that you work with and see if you can get everybody using it the same way and get all of them to talk about the benefits of why everybody should use it. And that will help with adoption.
Yeah, and also
Sandy, you're muted.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up question to that. Is there anything, so we have some that are starting to use it, but is there anything you can do in Microsoft, like, I don't know, a banner across the top of the page that says, should this email be a post? Something, because what it is it's just not their top of mind. Like, they're willing to do it, but they're busy, and so they're not in the habit. So is there anything you can do that in like Outlook that would sort of maybe prompt them to think about that?
No, Teams,
That-
got any ideas?
That's a good question, and what I have seen work pretty well is, and I need to go back to this mandate comment because I think there's more I could say about that, but what I've seen work is a boss or even a coworker gently saying, firing an email back saying, hey, this is great. Thanks for sending an email or whatever. I have copied it over into channel posts because other people would be interested in this, or it's valuable enough. I want it to be available in the future to the whole team. But the mandate, that's kind of a harsh word. I don't like to mandate people to do things because it's just so harsh out of the blue. Number one, you've got to build up I call it the WIIFM, what's in it for me with them. You've got to let people know what's in it for me. You really should customize the team's channels and tabs and such to the point where it makes complete sense to people to say, wow, this really fits how I do my job. And you make it so useful that you cannot keep them away from it. That's going to win 80 to 90% of the people. So then you don't have to be so forceful when you mandate it. But then to the 10% who just don't easily come over, you just pull them aside and say, hey, I really need you to do this because number one, it saves us hours and hours of work. It makes us more profit, all the stuff I said. And plus, it will not be good if you remain in email and everybody else is in Teams. Things are going to fall through the cracks and we can't have those errors. So I really must have you in Teams rather than email.
Andy, you guys might need some more training too on some like the nuances and something in that space. So something to consider.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Teresa asked, would you use one channel for each project? It depends. We've worked with a lot of engineering companies and another company who's project focused. If it's what we found out is if it's a larger project, it's good to have a whole team for a project, and then the channels are the processes within running a project. But sometimes you have the one-off, the smaller projects and all that don't justify a whole team. So yes, I'd like to have a small project team, and then each channel is those smaller, quicker projects.
Arnie, do you see the question from Mickey?
I'm just scrolling down to it. If you've read it and want to paraphrase, that would be good.
I have not. I can read out loud for all of us. So
Okay.
one other challenge that can arise in the trainings is that IT can configure things differently. So some features and functionality can be different from a specific business. That's interesting. Mickey, you must be in a larger company. Our retention schedule here makes some of the value of Teams frustrating because our posts don't always last long enough to be used as a historical record of knowledge. There's a chance, Mickey, that your IT group maybe doesn't understand how to set stuff up. There's kind of a fear when the data and everything moves to the cloud. But if you understand how to set things up for retention and compliance and security, those things shouldn't be pulled off. Arnie, I don't know if you have any perspective on that.
Yeah, if it's a larger corporation, that's tough, and you've got to plead your case. And I had some success in my corporate days. Right after Teams was released, believe it or not, in my corporation, they said, if this team is not active in 6 months, we're just evaporating it. It's gone. I thought, no, that's not good because we want to keep some of this stuff. And then on the flip side, you've got the retention rules and all. So you got to negotiate with IT. So we elevated it through our chain of command. And when you get high enough on your chain of command, there's enough clout there that while we might not be able to influence the IT department, the executive VP or COO certainly can. So
And that would be
let those high ups negotiate for you.
exactly. And because Mickey, it absolutely would be a waste because of everything Arnie and Nancy have been saying, is it instead of having all this these conversations accumulate in email, you're accumulating it in a knowledge base within each team, within each channel, and it's highly searchable. So it really would be a waste to have that blown away. Yeah, and I'd be happy to talk offline with you, Mickey, if you're interested, but yeah, that's an unfortunate that they're doing it that way.
Okay, Cheryl asked, and this is a great question. We try to keep the number of channels down so they don't get hidden. If it's a team you're in a lot, you can force those channels to show. I can't remember what off the top of my head, maybe Nancy knows, but
13.
Pardon?
You can see 13 channels. More than that, well, it'll automatically hide them.
Yeah, but it seems like I have been able to show these channels. I'd have to go look, but I have been able to make them show up. Yeah, and there's a whole art to what should be channels.
Right.
Oftentimes they're processes, sometimes they're sub departments. It just depends. People say, well, what should they be? Hate to say it, but it depends.
Yeah,
And you
this is
have the
another reason
ability-
you want to. Oh, go ahead, Nancy.
No, go ahead. There's so many ways to have channels that you are active in all the time show. So, taking a look at what are you trying to accomplish for you specifically, and then, how might that help others in your organization? So really digging in there and asking the question, okay, here's why we want, 200 channels to show at once. Well, if you have 5 or 10 or 15 teams and 200 channels a piece, or even 12 channels a piece, that's a lot of information in front of you all the time. What are the handful that you are in all the time? And there's ways to make those keep in the forefront for you, right, Arnie?
Yes, it's highly customizable. That left panel where the teams and channels show. And before I left corporate world, I was on 46 teams, active in a lot of them. But I wasn't overwhelmed because you have the option of hiding those teams you're not in daily. So they're still available, but they don't clutter your screen. And likewise with the channels, if you need to see them, you can make them show up for you, because yeah, it drives me nuts to have to click on hidden channels and then choose it from the pop-up. So the good news is you don't have to live like that.
So Joe asked, is there a presentation to how to activate posts in Teams? And Joe, it's just part of the Teams application. So if you remember the slide where Arnie showed you the post, kind of like the chat we're having now, where he had, here's a post and here's all the replies to the posts that were happening. You shouldn't have to activate posts. I don't even think you can deactivate posts. So it should just automatically be there in each of the channels that are available in all of your teams.
Okay,
Yeah,
I see.
found it. I was thinking of a different application or icon, and it's in the Teams, not in the chat. So thank you.
Okay, good. Yay.
Yeah, Mickey, my gosh, I feel for you. The legal counsel has a limit in place that they will not allow things to last. Yeah, legal. You don't want to do battle with legal, but at the same time, we had a saying way back in the electric utility business when I was in there. If you left business up to the lawyers and environmental and safety, you would never put electricity out the lines. So because safety would not want to turn on that big machinery because someone could get hurt. Legal doesn't want to do things because you could get sued, and environmental doesn't want power plants running because you might accidentally dump something into a river. So bottom line is you've got to provide value and make profits. So yeah, that battle may be way up the org chart, but it's still worth fighting because my company said we will never go to the cloud because, it's after 9/11, especially, we don't need the grid going down. And by golly, 2 years before I left the company, everything was in the cloud. So things can change if the business case is there. So maybe the CEO needs to talk to the legal side of the business and say, but we really need this because it's that valuable.
Yeah, the productivity gains would outweigh it, I would think.
Yeah,
So.
I'm wishing you luck.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap up, but this has been fun. A little bit of dialogue in the session is nice. So any other remaining questions?
Great questions.
Yeah.
There you go. The last
All
slide.
right. Perfect. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. Reach out if you need help with anything and battling your legal counsel. We'd be happy to give you some business reasons to bring to their attention. So yeah, thanks, everyone.